You've probably heard stories about love, about hate, and about pain. But what if I told you that a wedding, a day meant to be filled with joy, love, and celebration, turned into a life-changing moment of kindness that would heal more than just hearts? Today, we're diving into a story of a moment that began with cruelty, but ended with something none of us could have expected. Let me ask you, what if one act of kindness could change everything? What if it could heal even the most broken of spirits? It was the kind of wedding that everyone dreams of. The flowers, the cake, the elegant white dresses, a day for celebration. But for Marcus, a man with a deep love for his partner, this wasn't a dream, this was supposed to be a nightmare. Marcus had been invited to his childhood friend's wedding. He had always thought of this day as a moment to reconnect, to witness the woman he had grown up with exchange vows. What he didn't expect was to walk into a room where people would turn their heads, whisper behind their backs, and stare as if he didn't belong. Marcus had always been confident, but today, there was an invisible weight hanging over him. His partner, Jordan, was at home, preparing dinner, and they had talked about how they'd get together after the wedding to enjoy a quiet evening. But Marcus had no idea that the night was about to take a turn he would never forget. The evening started innocently enough. He mingled with old friends, chatted with distant cousins, and even caught up with the bride. But as the night wore on, something in the air shifted. The guests' glances grew colder, more judgmental. A comment here, a stare there. Marcus couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he felt off. Then it happened. While he was talking to an old acquaintance near the buffet table, a woman who had once been a close friend of his ex-fiancée Kara walked by. As she passed him, she casually spilled her glass of red wine. The splash hit his chest with a violent force, soaking his crisp white shirt. Gasps filled the air. It felt like the whole room had frozen. Before Marcus could react, Kara, the bride, turned to him with a venomous glare. I should have known you'd be here, making a mockery of my wedding. What are you even doing here, bringing him? She sneered, pointing at him. Her eyes filled with disdain. Tears welled up in his eyes, not because of the wine, but because of the harshness, the cruelty that dripped from her words. Get him out of here, Kara, someone called from across the room. Marcus' heart dropped. He felt every eye on him, every whisper sinking into his skin. For a moment, he wanted to run, to escape the suffocating air of rejection. But then, something remarkable happened. Jordan. That name. The love of his life. It was the last thing Marcus needed to hold on to in that moment. And that's when it happened. The bride's voice cut through the room again. You think you're so special. You and your husband. Her words stung, but the emphasis on husband was something Marcus couldn't ignore. It was a simple slip, a simple acknowledgement, something that shifted the dynamics of the entire room. Suddenly, the whispers died down, and a strange silence hung in the air. All eyes were now on Marcus, not in pity, but in something different. The judgment that had once burned so fiercely began to wane. Marcus looked around the room, and that's when he saw it. He saw the realization flicker in the eyes of the other guests. A few of them exchanged glances, their expressions softening, as if something in the air had changed. The uncomfortable tension had shifted from rejection to something else, a question, maybe even curiosity. One by one, people began to step forward. It started with an older woman, someone Marcus had never spoken to. She came up to him and apologized softly. I'm sorry for what happened, she said, her voice kind but full of regret. I should have known better. I don't know what came over me. Then, another guest, this one a man who'd been laughing with the group moments before, came over and quietly offered him a napkin to wipe the wine off his shirt. We don't get many men who are open about their relationships here, the man said, his voice almost a whisper. But I admire your courage. I think it's time we start looking at the world with new eyes. By now, the entire room had turned. People had begun to talk about love, about acceptance, about what it meant to embrace the diversity of humanity instead of rejecting it. It was small, it was subtle, but it was real. As the evening wore on, the wedding was no longer just about the bride and groom. It had become about something deeper, something richer. Love was no longer confined to the traditional walls. And through a simple act of kindness, someone's apology, someone's willingness to stand up for what was right, the entire evening shifted. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. Kara, still holding the weight of her own shame, approached Marcus. Her eyes were soft, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry for what I said," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I should have known better." Marcus could feel the sincerity in her words, and for the first time that night, he saw the woman he once called a friend not as the bride in a perfect dress, but as someone who had been wrong, just like him. I understand," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's okay." But there was no bitterness, no anger, just the recognition of shared humanity. The rest of the night passed in a haze of laughter, music, and renewed friendships. Marcus, who had felt like an outsider just hours earlier, found himself at the center of a group of people who truly saw him, accepted him, and embraced him. In the end, it wasn't the wine that mattered, it was the kindness, the willingness to confront our biases and break down the walls we've built. It was the power of one act, one kind word, that had the ability to turn an entire evening around. As Marcus and Jordan sat down together later that night, he reflected on what had happened. "Can you believe that?" Marcus whispered, gazing into his partner's eyes. "One act of kindness, and it changed everything. What would you do if someone showed you kindness in your moment of pain? Can you imagine how different the world would be if we all took a moment to act with compassion?" Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your stories of kindness, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with others who need a little hope today, because when we choose kindness, we change the world, one moment at a time.